Welcome everyone to the Realty Debate, which will focus on India's most curious and expensive real estate market, Mumbai. Curious because this is one real estate market where sales have slowed down considerably, yet prices continue to climb. The inventory overhang, or the measure of time it will take for the unsold supply in any market to get sold, has now crossed the red mark of 24 months in several micro markets of Mumbai region, Thane and Navi Mumbai included. Yet prices remain extremely stubborn. And the reason is quite simple. Where is the land to build homes in large numbers in this city which will meet the pent-up demand? That's precisely why Mumbai developers have to negotiate the hard game of redeveloping existing old dilapidated societies, clusters and buildings, mills included. Unfortunately, the process has been extremely slow and painful. So, today's focus, Mumbai's redevelopment, issues, challenges and potential. Now, before I bring in my panel, introduce them to you, just let me give you a small background, especially to viewers joining us from across the country, on how did it all begin. Redevelopment work in this city, we're talking about Mumbai, first generated interest in 1991 when the Maharashtra government framed regulations for this development. But there were few projects for the first few years. Lack of clarity on rights and regulations was the big deterrent. Redevelopment attracted more interest from developers after 1999. That's about 14 years ago, when they were allowed to construct additional flats in a given area and sell them at market prices. So that was the big thing. Redevelopment of cities' old mill lands into high-rise residentials in prime locations or commercial buildings also brought redevelopment to the forefront. Despite the deep need for redevelopment, the statistics though look fairly dismal. Only 5% projects since 1991 have seen completion. Now, why has that happened? Joining me are Sanjay Dutt, Executive MD South Asia, Cushman and Wakefield, India; Chandresh T. Mehta, Director Rustomjee Group; Uday Wavikar, VP Consumer Court Advocate Association, Maharashtra and Goa; and Ashutosh Limai, Head Research and Real Estate Intelligence Services, who has pre-recorded an interview with us. Sameer Jasuja, CEO and founder of Prop Equity, here supporting me from the Delhi studio against all the mighty giants sitting in Mumbai. Okay, I'm going to first toss over the question to Sanjay. Sanjay, what is it? I mean, we're looking at buildings collapsing. We'll look at the statistics later. They'll flash as we go on into the discussion. Yet we just haven't been able to get this little piece together for a city which has so much demand.
There are several types of land in Mumbai under various body and jurisdictions in Mumbai. So whether it's 350 acres of textile land, several hundred acres of slum land, BMC leases, collector land, or various other bodies like MMRDA and several others. And each of these bodies have their own jurisdiction, their own rules, their own laws, and depending on what the scheme is, whether you had an industrial property on those land parcels or existing residential property, offer various kind of complications, and therefore it's very difficult to go about putting this in place. Having said that, of late, because of scarcity of land, a lot of developers have ventured out and started creating their expertise in redevelopment market. And some, you would have noticed, some tier 1 developers have gone for textile mills. So obviously large chunky properties, extremely valuable, very high ticket, but easier to manage because textile committee has certain policies. There is one-third share of the land that is given for redevelopment, and then you're able to build 1.33 FSI and some fungible now, with the exception of few schemes where you can have built parking. And all of that, have certain time built into that aspect, and likewise others. So really, it's a complicated procedure, the process, and if that happens over 2 governments or 2 regimes or 2 municipal commissioners in the government department, you had it, and therefore it takes all the while to get these going.
Chandresh, would you agree with Sanjay? Policy flip-flop, multitude of regulations has been the biggest deterrent for developers to aggressively go after the big Mumbai dream of redevelopment?
Yes, Manisha, to an extent he is right. However, I would add here that no doubt there is regulation and excessive regulation, but there is again a dearth of regulation for those aspects of the redevelopment which is not yet covered. What I mean to say is that redevelopment is an inclusive process. At times, the entire redevelopment process is hijacked by an insignificant minority, and even though the significant majority is for the development, there is no mechanism, there is no regulatory framework where the will of the majority can be enforced. And let's say in a development of 50 tenements where there are 50 flat holders living in one particular building, I cannot really demolish the building till such time as each and every one of those 50 people vacate. And if you talk about legislation to ensure that, let's say, 5% or 10% are able to hold that entire project to ransom. So while there is regulation in those aspects of redevelopment which is not required, and whereas there is lack of legislation in certain other aspects of redevelopment, which is to do with clearing the property and securing the title.
All right, Uday Wavikar, you've been very closely associated with societies, interacting with them on this issue, and have looked at this topic very, very deeply. Tell me, what is it that takes societies or holds back 10% of people in societies who are living in dilapidated buildings, ready to crumble any day, threat to their lives, yet not give a go-ahead to redevelopment? Why is there so much distrust?
If you, Manisha, look at the past of redevelopment, there was no PMC, that is the project management consultancy under section 79, which is now mandatory for the society as an advisory, which has an architect, which has a lawyer, which also has a chartered accountant, society consultant and structural engineer. Because of lack of the legal knowledge or otherwise, there was a risk that you may lose your house, and it has happened. By the so many examples are there in Mumbai, that you give your house to a developer, you get out, building is demolished, and you may not get it back because whole projects are sold. At times. So there is, or the delays, there are so much delays. The project that says 18 months will complete, they would not complete for 5 years, and developer stops paying alternate rent to the people. People are on the roads. So because of this care, people did not want to go forward for redevelopment, or some of them wanted so much to do and they take a risk with a fly-by-night operator. There has to be some regulation as far as licensing is concerned for redevelopment. Good builders are doing good redevelopment, but then again time lag and there are legal issues. But the legal issues are now getting sorted out. I do not agree with Chandresh that if a single member doesn't leave, my project gets held up. It is not happening now. Courts, regulatory authorities including MHADA, there are various regulations. People can't hold you for ransom. But builders are delaying on the contrary because there are the good builders have to take up the redevelopment, or societies have to now think of self-redevelopment, because you have lot of Tatas are coming forward, Larsen and Toubro is coming forward to build, so why not self-redevelop? So that proposition is also now, and some societies in Bombay have done it. And then the society has a great profit, because one has to look at the maintenance cost after redevelopment. Today you are paying 1,000 rupees maintenance, after redevelopment you will be paying 5,000 rupees to 10,000 rupees maintenance. Can a middle class family afford it, who is a lower middle class?
Chandresh, I'm sure you have a counterpoint. Why not allow the societies to do it themselves? So I'm wondering,
yes,
it's such a task to build a single house in India. How do you go about building a whole building and redeveloping?
I beg to differ with Uday here. First and foremost, he's talking about you can go to courts. Manisha, you tell me which developer is interested in, after putting crores of rupees in vacating, let's say 90% of the members, after investing so much money in FSI, which developer is interested in going to court and spending years together to get one or insignificant minority vacated? So no doubt, I mean, the courts are always there and you normally do get a positive verdict, but it is the time loss and the cost escalation because of the time loss that is worrying. Secondly, he brought up the topic of self-redevelopment. I have yet to see a single instant where a society has self-redeveloped where the members have vacated, the buildings have been built and they have come back. If Uday knows of any single case where self-redevelopment has successfully concluded, I would like to be corrected. So it is very easy to say that you please approach the courts and get the members vacate, but that is self-defeating. One of the key reasons why development does not happen and does not happen in great numbers is because of the greed of the societies. I mean, any a fly-by-night operator may give them a little more, 10% more. These societies go in that direction and then they blame that they have been duped and the development is not happening. Of course, there has to be a regulation to ensure that developers don't take the societies for granted and conclude whatever they have begun. But till such that, I mean, there is no dearth of good developers if societies want. There is an entire process, as Uday said, under 79A. They can conclude that process, hand over the development. The only thing that the developer wants, only one assurance that he wants, that after having concluded the process as mandated by law and as mandated by the society, people will vacate. That's the only assurance that we want. If that happens, I think we will have a wonderful development, and we have got, as a group, we are in this business of redevelopment since 1999. And we have got a good experience. But these issues are there and they need to be resolved.
Okay, so we got to tackle them. Absolutely. So let me get independent perspective. Sameer, what do you think? I mean, have the developers done a decent enough job to give societies that confidence that, hey, why would we want to undertake such a humongous task? Like I said, in India, you lose all your hair building a single house. Imagine 100 people coming together to actually agree on redeveloping something by themselves. That's something which I would probably tend to agree with Chandresh is a very difficult task.
No, I completely agree with you. Hats off to the developers who can execute redevelopment projects successfully. You know, first of all, managing to convince 10 families to have the same opinion is so difficult, and here there are 300 tenements, there are 50 tenements. It's just almost impossible. That's why very, very few developers in Mumbai have been able to develop this expertise and mostly have built a track record, and only society should ideally go to them, because this is not anybody's cup of tea. The second, it's most difficult. Secondly, that I think that the developers also in our country have not been the most ethical lot, right? Here, there is a huge risk, as one of the panelists rightly pointed out. You have to give up your home. You have to believe the developer that he will rebuild the home later and give it back to you. And you have to trust the developer that he will pay your rent, which is a huge leap of faith that one has to take with the developer class typically, because they've not really lived up to.
And even one case gone wrong, people become very, very apprehensive about this whole thing.
The one point that I want to make is that the biggest opportunity in Mumbai lies in redevelopment. And somebody was talking about time loss, but that's all factored in. Where do you get to do a project where your neighboring project is trading at 40,000 rupees a square feet and your cost of sale to the first time buyer, which is the pre-launch buyer, is 15,000 rupees a square feet? That's the arbitrage opportunity that lies, and that's where I think the biggest potential lies in redevelopment. But many ethical developers have to come in to be able to take this forward. And I completely agree with the panelist from Rustomji that it is impossible for a society to take over a project and do redevelopment. This is an expertise that you require, which a developer could only get.
Absolutely, and clearly there is a lot of money to be made in this game, despite the fact that it takes 5 to 8 years to get through with a redevelopment project. That's the reason why you have country's largest names like Tata's and Godrej, everybody entering into the fray in Mumbai, where land has become completely scarce. Ashutosh Limaya recorded his interview a little bit earlier in terms of getting his opinion, and he also believes the biggest challenge that developers face is simply one. It just takes so long. The cost of capital sometimes is the biggest deterrent.
I think the challenge in completing projects on time, there are two main challenges. One is the time that is required to procure all the necessary approvals. I think Indian cities, Mumbai in particular, this aspect is pretty poor, and when we mean that there is a lot of time required to procure the permissions, that means that the holding cost for the developer goes up, and that means it puts a lot of pressure and constraint on the finances. And in today's time, when financing cost has spiraled up as well, that puts additional burden, and that gives rise to the second reason then why developers are not able to cope up with the intended speed of construction. In case of residential project, what happens is developers typically link the cash flow with the sales that happen, and people who book apartments or houses pay as the construction progresses. In market conditions such as today's, where sales have slowed down, that internal inflow of cash that comes from the buyers has also slowed down. So that is another reason why we are seeing slowing down in construction of projects.
Sanjay, would you agree that yes, there's a huge amount of risk involved in redevelopment in the city of Mumbai, and of course even in markets like Thane, where you could get large parcels for cluster development, yet the game, if you can get it right, is so mouth-watering that almost everybody has entered the fray?
No, absolutely right. 350 acres of textile mill land in Bombay, 1500 acres of port trust of land, 650 acres of Dharavi, several hundreds of acres around airport and around highway and all the way in Thana, for example. It's the opportunity which needs to be captured from developers' perspective, and outside of this, therefore the land is so expensive that it's not viable. So developers, whether they are Omkar, whether they are Rustomji, whether they are HDIL or several others also now are increasingly looking at this wonderful opportunity where once they understand a society or where the government, for example, is coming out with the government colony with a clear and clarity on the kind of values they want to achieve, the kind of specs they want as a housing project, all of these are bringing in opportunities for these developers, and they're looking at it very extensively. It is also true that it wasn't there right from the beginning. The developers have also gone through their learning. This industry is now almost in the 10th or 12th year of its progress, and therefore they've developed certain skills, expertise. Uday made a very important point. We never had a lawyer, a chartered accountant, and other people advising societies earlier, and they were taking calls on themselves, and they were not often well informed. They didn't know how to negotiate. Today all that learning has gone in, and there's various lessons for them to take, and therefore in a way more sanitized land parcels or opportunities are coming to the way of developers, and they're very keen to take it. And in comparison to go for a high value land bid in the market, these are coming at a fairly attractive prices. Having said that, the issue of development taking too long in Mumbai is a general issue. It happens to any land purchase or redevelopment. The approval, the clearing, the construction, the issues concerning with various bodies, it still remains. So real estate development overall is a very challenging business in Mumbai, and developers need to factor the cost of time into the project and therefore see the viability from project to project.
Absolutely, and I think that's the key and the crux to it. What are the expectations that you're going to set when you're negotiating with the society? Everybody from RNA Corp, Kalpatru, Rustomji, of course big players, now Omkar, Hiranandani, Zobroi Realty, name it, and a Mumbai developer has its finger in the redevelopment pie. So what is it that they need to do? They need to just bring back that trust that they have or share with the society. A big question again to be asked is, should they be doing it with big developers like the Tata or the Godrej, or should they go with local developers who know the local market better and all the intricacies involved with it? Lot more to discuss on the big Mumbai redevelopment story and the debate that we are undertaking here. We'll be back in just a moment. Mumbai's redevelopment. What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? That's what we are focusing on today. For viewers who are joining us from across the country, why is there such a crying need for this discussion? Look at some of the figures. Around 1 lakh residents live in around 900 old dilapidated buildings in Mumbai alone. More than 90 people have been crushed under such dangerous buildings in the last 3 months. Over 20,000 housing societies, 17,000 cessed buildings and over 3,000 MADA structures are waiting for redevelopment proposals. Market survey report states that around 16,000 MADA buildings are decrepit since 1999. We're talking about 14 years ago. And merely 8% of these 17,000 cessed buildings have been redeveloped. So, lots of opportunity, lots of challenges. Uday, let me come back to you. You know, you talk about this lack of trust between developers and the society members. With the entry of large reputed developers, do you think that's the way societies should go? Or do you think this game which has so far been with smaller local developers who have actually managed to deliver and do a good job, should the societies be going with them?
It is always better to go with a reputed developer because you have a trust of completion of project and quality of project. But the problem is twofold. For a smaller society, reputed developers would not like to come unless there is a big chunk of profit for them. Unless it's a huge area, unless there are minimum of 8 societies, 10 societies, where they can get good sellable portion, because ultimately for a developer, selling interest is always there. What sellable area they are going to get, that is their pie. So if you want to develop small societies, you have to go with local developers. But now, again I am coming back to Chandresh, there are 5 societies and big societies in Bombay who have done self-development effectively, and 3 of them have been constructed by Larsen and Toubro, 1 of them has been constructed by Tatas as a contractor. So even that era is coming, because what was happening in Bombay originally? Certain class of people, even including Ndtv, people will come together, they get a plot of land from the government allotted, and that plot of land they used to develop as a societies. So you had the common culture, identical people with a common vision. Trust is going out in societies in cooperation, but now for the redevelopment, you have even finance available easily. If you go to the Mumbai Development Cooperative Bank is giving you a finance for redevelopment. That era might come or might not come, but I still vouch that good developers also take smaller projects, and societies after all have to do good legal processing, because if your documentation is correct, and as far as Bombay is concerned, there is the business of Bombay is today redevelopment. When the Credit Cooperative Society movement started in Bombay, they said, what is the business of Bombay? So fishing was the business of Fishing Credit Cooperative Society came. Today if you ask what is the business of Bombay, it is redevelopment. In a small island, out of every 3 people, 1 person is staying in slum, in Gauthan, in Koliwada, and that is what is happening. There is a lot of need of housing in Bombay, and you have to go up.
So point taken, reputed builders is the way to go. Samir, would you agree with that or go with the local developers? I'm just getting a sense, because viewers watching this need to have some takeaways. Who do we go with? Their choices are huge. Almost every developer is in the game.
I think absolutely with reputed developers. Ideally,
when you mean reputed, is it size, is it brand?
So
what is reputed?
I'll come to that. In my definition for redevelopment, a reputed developer is one who has done redevelopment projects, successfully executed them, preferably in the micro market in which they are in.
Okay.
Because then he has also got enough contacts in the various departments of the government to be able to push files, be able to do that. That's what a reputed developer is. And if the developer is also a quality developer like a Godrej or a Tata, then that's the icing on the cake. But the developer should clearly have a cell where there are dedicated people only handling redevelopment.
Okay, so
if there's a new reputed developer who's trying to do his first off project, he may get fed up with the whole timelines that it takes to do a redevelopment project. May not be the best bet.
Alright, so you don't want to be that guinea pig, and I think Ashutosh Lima, I hear out his views. He also was of a similar opinion that go with guys who've done this business before in your locality.
Yes, they do. I think there is a lot of comfort between the local developers and people residing in those neighborhoods, and the societies and people living in there. They really put some weightage to the past projects done by that developer in that area, and often it means that they are aware of their past projects, and they know that this developer has focus in this area. He doesn't really try too many adventures, and he has a track record to show. So I think they are seen no less than the big boys who are well known because of their brand value, who are well known because they construct large projects. They are present in more than one parts of the city, and many times you have seen that the local developers are marginally ahead of the large developers when it comes to housing society redevelopment. I think the large developers are marginally ahead in terms of slum rehabilitation schemes, but when it comes to societies, I think that a little bit of local comfort certainly helps.
Chandresh, what are your views?
I tend to agree with Uday. He hit the nail on the head when he said that developers are interested in bigger projects. So at the moment there are many societies, large quantum of societies chasing few developers. So that issue is always there. We internally in Rustomji are also targeting on all aspects of redevelopment. We are present in slum redevelopment, we are also present in MADA redevelopment, and we also develop CEST buildings. So, and each of these categories have their own limitations, and it requires their own expertise. So I agree with Uday and also Sanjay and Ashutosh that yes, local knowledge, the fact that you have done it before is very important, because this is a very tricky business. You require a different set of skills to handle societies, to handle members, to handle issues inter se among members, and it requires, and we have gone through this a couple of cycles already, so we know when a problem does come up, we know how to handle it. So there is a domain knowledge as far as the approval is concerned, whether it is MADA, whether it is SRA, whether it is BMC, and also there is a huge amount of domain knowledge that is required to handle societies, to handle people. Each of them, even though he is holding a 500 square feet flat, is an owner. So you need to give them that respect, you need to give them that comfort, and that comes after with experience. You require a totally different mindset when you are dealing with societies.
All right, fair enough. So we are converging to reputed local developers who have some experience in navigating the complicated process, not really the big names that we are talking about, unless they have actually done some work. That would be a safer bet. Sanjay, that's a big conclusion to come to, but just wanted another perspective from you in terms of, you know, all these changing MADA rules. They talk about FSIs going up from 3 to 4 for redevelopment, for clusters going up by 1.33. What are we talking about? We're in Mumbai. We should be looking at FSIs of 8, 9, 10. When are we going to get there?
I think the answer lies, with the government, who's been trying to, address these issues of the city in a very ad hoc manner, in bits and pieces. So one body decides to do X, you have MMRDA doing Wadala development, which is 45 million square feet, one of the largest, and they want to turn that into a CBD. And then you have hundreds of acres in central Mumbai being developed under textile mill policy. There is no one master plan with the government where all the stakeholders come together and they understand that there are certain social infrastructure gaps, schools, colleges, hospitals, nursing homes missing, certain quality of road infrastructure, mass transport system, and therefore are able to address the infrastructure issues, and then therefore they can take a call of what FSI that we should allow. Globally, it has been proven that if you create a critical mass in a certain limited geography, you're able to optimize the cost of infrastructure instead of doing a horizontal large layouts where people are only traveling on their own cars, which is very unfortunate. So you're right, if you can have an FSI of 5 to 10 or 15, provided we have a proper master planning for water, electricity, road, social infrastructure, all that is possible. If the government is going to continue in bits and pieces, they will never get it right, and we will continue to come in and debate, how and when will they address it.
Absolutely. I think that's my big concern as well. The piecemeal work that happens, you cross one hurdle and you meet another one. Uday, just explain to me another thing which I heard from one of the large developers. They said not only are rules complicated across different kind of bodies who are governing different pieces of redevelopment, but something as simple as what are you promising the homeowner? Why can't it be a simple formula like, hey, you give up 800 square foot or 250 square foot and that's exactly what you get back. Why are there complicated deals being struck where, you know, you will get this much of money, you could get this much extra? Why can't it be simplified and then becomes transparent across all redevelopment process?
Manisha, I totally agree with you, and there has to be a standardized policy. But what happens is each plot, each smaller society, bigger society, the offerings go according to the sellable areas of the builder, and then they can provide incentive. You have to get out of the house, you have to get a rent. Rent differs from area to area. So bringing standardization would really help. Transparency would be there, but at the same time, various authorities are there, their regulations have to be, and I agree with Sanjay, when government said Bombay has to be made as Shanghai, then you give a Shanghai FSI. In city, Mumbai city, you have FSI from 4 to 7 clustered development, whereas in suburbs you have only 1:1 and 0.33. This disparity has to be removed. And when we remove these disparities and make a standardized plan for a common man, it has to be a silver line to common man. We have no option but redevelopment. But common man should not be thrown out from Mumbai and chunk of profits to be taken by builder with a free of cost land taking. That should not be the scenario, and therefore government has to awake and arise and make a standardized policy, give a good FSI, as you rightly said, like Shanghai 8 and 9 and 10. Then only Bombay city can develop, because that is the need of the hour, and infrastructure facilities, because water, electricity is a must, and planning of the roads and infrastructure is a bigger challenge, Manisha.
Okay, chunk of profits. Now talking about chunk of profits, because everybody thinks that this has to be a mouth-watering game. That's why you have all the large developers of Mumbai in the pie. You also have now PEs backing this game. India REIT Fund Advisors backed by the Piramal Group. ASK Property Investments are among some of the PE firms investing in redevelopment projects. You also have Kotak Realty Fund looking at this segment. India REIT has invested in the Versova project with Paranjpai schemes in 2011. In January this year, they raised another 400 crore to invest specifically in redevelopment. ASK picked up a 49% stake in a Chembur project of Godrej Properties. Total cost 700 crores, and of course they have invested 100 crores in it. Sameer, are the profits so abnormal as Uday makes it out to be, or is it just that there is nothing else to develop in Mumbai other than go for redevelopment projects?
I think it's a combination of both. Land is clearly scarce in Mumbai, so it's not that it's usually available. B, if you have to buy land in Mumbai, you have to cough up the money up front, and that is a huge sum, and you're not going to get any bank funding for the same. Compare that to a redevelopment project where you don't have to pay entirely for the land. You have a huge cost arbitrage. So I don't necessarily agree with developers that they have to cough up a lot of money, because what they do is, because there is such a huge arbitrage available, they have people ready, I would say investors ready, who are willing to buy into the project, pay 20% of the eventual flat price,
this is what
fund
I
the developer,
about.
fund the developer, and he then uses that money to be able to pay off some of the residents over there and get the project going. Why does it take so much time for a project, a redevelopment project to also happen? Is because developers are a bit cash strapped also. They can't raise all the money at the same time. It takes them time to pre-sell those units and then be able to get money and then pay some of the residents off. So that's why it takes so much more longer. So I would say combination of both, but yes, clearly if you were to make from X to 3X in a normal project, here the margins are from X to at least 6X or 10X. Okay. That's the kind of difference we're talking about.
So it's a laborious process, but definitely there's so much more jam in the game.
Absolutely, and that's why it takes much longer, but the IRRs for a PE fund or for a developer are that much more.
Chandresh Mehta, IRR in redevelopment projects much higher. Is that the reason why you're focusing on that segment? Honest answer.
Not really, Manisha. If it comes to, I think the societies have become wiser, and they are in know of everything, and the regulation requires that they be aided by a PMC. So, so it's an open game. I mean, no doubt. If I have to take a similar plot which is freehold, which is vacant, I will have to cough up the money up front. But the risks are also not there. So if I have a vacant piece of land, I can start work from tomorrow. That is not the case here. The risks are much higher. The risk of the project stalling. Any member can go to court and put a stay, and then I have to run around to the courts. Take anything between 2 to 5 years to get him vacated. And in the meantime, the rent is going on. I have already vacated the majority of the members. The rent meter is on. The corpus has already been paid. The FSI has been locked in. So those risks, and when you compare those risks, the return are commensurate to the risks that we take.
All right, that's risk-reward ratio is much higher in the game, absolutely. And if you're willing, in any asset class, in any investment, in any business, if you're taking higher risks, at the end of the cycle or tunnel, you have to see higher rewards. Otherwise, why would you get into it? All right, I'm going to end this with some of the questions that need to be asked. A checklist basically to find the right redeveloper for your project. If you're a Mumbaikar living in a society which needs a complete revamp, go with first, what is the brand of the developer? And by brand, I think the panel agrees it should be literally in terms of the track record of the developer and having done some redevelopment projects. How well known are they for it? Can the rest of the redevelopment scheme be on par with the quality and brand of the developer's portion? Now this one can only be checked if any of the projects have been done before. Is the developer known for violations, or does he have a clear track record on aspects such as title? What are the system, structure and strategy of the developer, which a PMC will help you evaluate? And that's one thing that Uday pointed out is an absolute must to get that going. Does the developer have a strong in-house construction and marketing teams? The record of cost and time overruns that he's incurred earlier in any of the redevelopment projects, level of implementation expertise, all of these can be found out and the PMC will evaluate for you. Is he knowledgeable about and comfortable with the local environment as we established on the show, and what is his current fund availability and funding pattern? At least there has to be some kind of a plan to make the funding available. Last comment, Sanjay, to get redevelopment process in Mumbai on the fast track, what is that one change that you would ask for?
I would expect the government to not go in the path of becoming another stakeholder in the development process, and therefore start expecting returns from real estate like a developer investor does. What I've seen in last few years is the government wanting a piece of the real estate, whether it's through property tax, whether through regulation, through fungible FSI, through fees and transfers. Stamp duty was the only one at one point of time. The government has to play a role of a facilitator of infrastructure, making the approval process streamlined, compressing the cycle, creating a transparency and well-governed structure for developers and consumers. Government needs to play that role rightly, and that's the only change that I would expect all the stakeholders, whether investors, developers, would be clearly met, and the consumers in the end would be extremely happy if that happens.
Uday, you're on your wish list, one thing that you think will actually make the Mumbai redevelopment plan a reality at a much faster pace.
Manisha, I feel it is a two-way process. Society also has to get awakened. They have to also take an active role in selecting the local builder, or as you said rightly, track record builder. Government has to play much more active role, and I agree with Sanjay, because today in Mahada, government is asking ready flats, and they have reduced the size of the extra area to be given. If there are disincentives, people would not like to come for redevelopment. On the contrary, more and more FSI has to be granted. There has to be equality, transparent policies, and most important is monitoring authorities are very, very important in a redevelopment. I agree with Chandresh also, because one person should not stall, though there are various judgments that one person cannot stall your redevelopment, but practically it takes time. And therefore, the government has to come up that once a society majority accepts, no individual should come forward and try to stall this kind of process, so that even developers are comfortable. And licensing of developers for redevelopment is also a very important issue. They have to be accredited builders so that fly-by-night operators do not take over the project and sell the project and you don't fall to the sharks. So these risks, because you are playing with your own house, which is very, very costly. Bombay flats have gone 300 times more, and you will not get the dream house tomorrow. If you get out, people are scared. So that kind of assurance, that kind of security has to be provided by governmental authorities, by developers, and also consumers have to be realistic in expecting the expectations.
All right, I think that's very well summed up. Uday, you've pretty much done my job. At this juncture, I'm going to thank my panelists, Sanjay, Chandresh, Uday and Samir. Thanks very much for joining us on this very interesting, important discussion on the redevelopment of Mumbai and opportunities and challenges. The best part of it was that the societies also have to wake up. They have to go with the right developer and not delay it any further. And of course, policy makers have to also come out with clearer regulations. I'm going to take a quick break now, but we'll come back with some more industry voices on what's going on with the real estate sector and some of the critical challenges faced by the sector as a whole. There's no denying that there is a slowdown and depression in the real estate market in many of the cities. But India's largest real estate player, DLF, says it's still upbeat about the future and has a game plan ready for the coming years. The company is ready with more launches and plans to complete up to 14 million square feet of area of the 50 million square feet that is under construction. Hear out Executive Director Rajiv Talwar speaking to Ndtv.
I have with me the management of DLF, Mr. Rajiv Talwar, the Executive Director. So thank you so much for joining us and congratulations on winning the award.
Thank you for a lovely platform.
I want to start off by asking you, I had a chance to go through your earnings press release, what you posted for the fourth quarter, and you mentioned, and I quote here, company envisages an uncertain and lower growth environment. Can you elaborate on that? Do you expect the environment ahead to be difficult? And if yes, what's the game plan for DLF?
Okay, very fine, yes. We do see that the coming year, given the growth rates as they are being projected right now and as they've been substantiated, that 4.8% in the fourth quarter, 5%, we hope that with a long time cycle industry like we are, where it takes in 3 to 4 years for a project to get completed, the next year will be a little choppy. We depend on the economy, we depend on the Indian citizen, and we depend on the Indian government to really give clearances fast, to invest into real estate and thereby kick in a much larger growth cycle which this industry does take on the responsibility, whether it's employment, whether it is industries which are ancillaries, whether it is in fact industries and personnel which go into the sales and marketing and then seeing that the maintenance and upkeep is there. So we really think that given the background of the last 2 or 3 years, there need to be many more steps, something like what we heard right now, the minister saying infrastructure status, exemptions from taxation, plus in fact making double-digit FSI and FAR rules so that the cost of land is really negated. I think we have to take a decision that if we have to make more compact cities, we will have to go higher. We will have to see that infrastructure, which is really provided much more easily in a compact structure and a compact city, is made available so that basically economic growth spans not only this industry, housing and construction, but also is able to spread itself into many, many more industries for which cities are much more viable than to spread them out all over the countryside.
So, going per the game plan that you have in mind for the year 2013-14 and the years ahead, would you be looking aggressively at new launches or would you be focusing on completing existing projects?
I think we have both. In an industry like housing and construction, you don't really look only at the coming year, you look at a few years ahead. And we are quite certain that in the coming year, we will not only be completing and which will be a humongous amount of completion. We have almost 50 million square feet of ongoing construction at any given point of time. Therefore, we should look forward to handing over and completing anywhere from 8 to 14 million square feet of space. But since those tend to be futuristic statements, we tend to fight shy of them and say that yes, projects which are on the anvil, projects which are under construction, it would be our endeavor to complete them ASAP, as fast as possible, and of course over the next few years try and keep the cycle going by more and more launches, some of which you've seen and some of which all over India you will see in future.
Two of your launches have generated substantial amount of interest. I'm talking about Crest and Camellia. Can you, for all of us who are watching, can you help us understand what's the outlook for both of these projects?
Okay, I think quality of life, we are really dependent on how people perceive us and what kind of quality of life they get. We take a huge amount of burden and interest and effort, put in effort with lots of dedicated staff and personnel and our co-developers in the sense of contractors, in the sense of PMCs, in the sense of labor, everyone included, that the quality of life which is given to the resident is actually the best that he can think of. That is our benchmark, that we should live up to the expectations of our customers who are the most valued for us. And we are quite fortunate that seeing Magnolias, seeing Bel Air and Park Place, I think the response has been very good. We've received some commendations which are really worthy of making you work, and we hope that yes, the Crest and the Camellias, which will include many more technological and design features which are new, will live up to the expectations of people who actually invest into them, and thereby give us not only satisfaction but also give everyone the returns they expect.
Mr. Dalwar, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, it's going to be a challenging year for developers to face the slowdown and emerge at the top of it. But of course, some of the leading companies are all armed with the right ammunition. It's a goodbye from me, and thanks so much for joining us.